Hello once again. I'm Bill Shelley. I'm the Senior Director of Sales for Alden Optical. We are the manufacturers for Astera Multifocal Toric. And the theme tonight is Astera Multifocal Toric, maximizing success with Alden's custom multifocal toric. Joining me on tonight's webinar will be your moderator, who's Maggie Walsh. She's a fellow in the CLSA and our Senior Product Specialist at Alden. She will be our moderator. And joining us are two distinguished optometrists, Dr. Natalie Corey of Ostop Optometry in Indiana, and Dr. Richard Shute, who's in Victor, New York. We'd also like to go over the agenda for tonight's meeting. First thing is we're going to do our introduction to Astera Multifocal Toric. We're going to do a design review. We're going to review some fitting guidelines and fitting pearls that we've learned over the 2.5-year lifespan of Astera. We're going to go over a case study, clinical pearls, and we're going to finish with question and answers. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Maggie.
Thanks, Bill. I'm Maggie Walsh, and we're going to go through some introduction to Astera. I know that most of you have already been fitting this lens, and so hopefully we'll advance that fitting process for you and maybe give you some more insight into how to fit this lens a little more efficiently. So how did Astera kind of come about is that we combined two of the best worlds. We were able to have the opportunity to use the Preza lens as the base for this and then add to it our toric design, which has the dual elliptical stabilization. We have unlimited base curve and diameter combinations that's available for our regular toric lens, so we were able to add that to the Preza lens to come up with the Astera lens. We can make this lens in 2 to 3 days and get it right out to you. We have a 90-day unlimited warranty on it. And when we combined these two, we came up with this design that separates the distance and near components. It's a center-near design, and you can change each one independently. The fitting is very straightforward, easy to follow, and because we're using our toric design, it's very stable, orients very quickly as soon as you put it in the eye. So this is what the lens looks like. This is the design, the center near, as I said, and then it kind of fans out into an intermediate area, and then, of course, the distances around the edges. We use a ad profile age kind of chart here. We take into consider both the age of the patient and what their ad is to decide which profile we're going to put them in, whether they are a beginning presbyope, or intermediate, or more advanced. We recently added that profile 3 so that we could broaden what we have available for our patients. It's a fairly large center near area, so it's very easy for a patient to adjust to. When we first came out with this lens and we wanted to give you some pearls, these are the ones that went into the fitting chart. And since then, we've expanded. We've had a lot of consultation calls. We've had this lens out there for a while, and that's why we have our two doctors tonight to expand on this and maybe give you some more tips on how you can make this an even easier and better process. But we always like to start with a new refraction, and because this is a multifocal toric and it's a very stable one, we feel that you can push plus pretty confidently in the distance. We used to say always start with the same ad profile in both eyes. We've kind of gone a little bit away from that, but for the most part, it's a good way to start. If you're using your diagnostic set, you would want to make sure those lenses settle for at least 10 or 15 minutes before you do an over-refraction. And then the other sense, if you're fitting the patient and you've got their initial lenses on them that you've ordered in, and they have pretty good distance vision and the reading's okay, it's probably a good idea to let them go, because it does take a while for that near vision to develop with any multifocal lens. The other thing is that we can put even a quarter diopter of fill in this lens, and we have found that sometimes correcting those low levels of astigmatism can be very beneficial to presbyopic patients. And then when you're assessing that optimization, always use handheld trials. It's the easiest and most efficient and most accurate way to do an overrefraction with this lens. So keys to success that we've kind of evolved into from all of the conversations that I've had with fitters calling me for consultation. Sometimes we do have to take into consideration both their age and their ad power and then kind of play around with that. Maybe asking them what's most important to them. Is it more important for them to have a good intermediate, or do they need something very, very close for whatever they do all day long? Sometimes in those instances we would have to split the ads. And again, as I said, let the patient wear the lenses for a week or 10 days before you make any prescription changes. Give your patient the appropriate expectations with a multifocal. We know that multifocals are difficult to adjust to, and some patients have a more difficult time with that than others. So give them those expectations and let them develop into their vision. Note the pupil size. I think it's very important, especially with a center-near design, if they are even a good candidate for wearing a simultaneous vision lens. And if you have it, use your diagnostic set. It can save you a lot of time. If you don't have one, it's highly recommended that you do get one. You can immediately find out if that patient is a good candidate for simultaneous vision, because as you know, some patients just aren't. And call consultation. We're there and we're willing to help, and a lot of times we can help you through something that's a little more difficult. I have an example case here. Just a 54-year-old woman. Keratometry readings were pretty standard. Refraction, she's just a myope with some astigmatism. A 250 ad, right eye dominant, and where would we start? So the first thing that we would do is to look at our ad profile chart and decide which profile we want to go with. She's 54, but yet she has a 250 ad. So this is a time where maybe you would want to split it, but that would be your call. So she's also pretty average Ks. We'd probably start with maybe an 8.6. Maybe we would go with 14.5 diameter. But at the same time, this is also a really good idea to try a diagnostic lens on. That way you could put the same ads in both eyes to start, or split the ads and see which one they seem to adapt to better. For this one, we'd suggest 8.6, 14.5. We would compensate for vertex distance on that right eye and just cut it back a little bit. But you could go with profile 2s on both eyes, and I probably would start there because I like to see patients earn that profile 3. So you might start with both profile 3s, but if you felt that they really have a strong need for near and you didn't want to waste a lot of time, you can start right out by putting that profile 2 on the right eye and the profile 3 on the left. Dr. Corey has some great ideas, and she's going to share those with us. She's been talking to me a little bit about how she has had very good success with this lens and how she comes up with it. Dr. Corey?
Okay. Yeah, I've had a lot of really good success with this lens. This is pretty much my go-to soft lens for patients with astigmatism and presbyopia. The way that I've found that is most successful are basically these bullet points that are listed. The first one talks about minimizing rotation of this lens. I think the important thing that I've learned is that if you can, and I do have a diagnostic set, I do fit from the diagnostic set, so if you can fit a little bit steeper, go ahead. I've found that patients where I've tried them in the 8.6 and the rotation looks pretty minimal, and I've gone ahead and pushed them into the 8.3 just to see what it kind of looks like, that's actually worked out pretty well in terms of minimizing the rotation without compromising patient comfort. So that's going to give them obviously a better visual outcome at distance and therefore up close because you're getting rid of those ghosting and haloing issues. I'm pretty aggressive at mixing profiles. I have no problem with if I know my patient and I know their needs and what hasn't been successful for them maybe in their previous multifocal systems, I won't hesitate to put a younger patient in a profile 1 and a profile 2 if I know they need a lot of up close. Same way if I know that I have maybe an intermediate patient that they need special distance demand, I won't hesitate to get them down to a profile 1 in their dominant eye. The benefit that I think about this lens is that it eliminates the need for monovision setup. I am personally not a fan of monovision at this stage of the game because I don't think there's a reason for it. And we know that all of our patients that are in monovision are going to come to us at some point in their 50s and say, well, now, Doc, I can't read the computer and use my up-close vision at the same time. And I think that's where this lens will really come into play for docs in their practices. Kind of solving that monovision problem. So if you have a patient that comes to you and says, hey, I'm having trouble with the computer and my current monovision setup, what can you do for me? I think this is a great direction to point them. And I think part of success just comes from the conversation with the patient and identifying them off the bat as being a good candidate for this lens. You know, we talk about the wear schedule for this patient, or for this lens. We talk about the advantages of this lens in terms of giving that patient simultaneous vision at all 3 of their distances. But if a patient, you know, is going to want super critical distance vision and maybe a multifocal system in general won't be the right choice for them, you need to be upfront with them about that and just kind of go with it from there. So those are kind of my tips on the lens.
Thank you, Dr. Corey. That's great. And now we will have Dr. Shute share us with his pearls on this lens.
I'd have to agree with Dr. Corey all the way through there. I think patient selection is huge. And, you know, this is a lens that you might be able to take that patient that's got a little 20/20 soft and not quite happy with maybe some ghosting at distance at night especially and put them to the next level. So, you know, we're going to try multiple different lenses on the patient. But, you know, have anybody with a little bit of astigmatism and they're that visually demanding patient, this lens is going to work for you. I think it's important, too, when I put this lens on the patient, that I'm going to let them know that probably, I hate to, you know, right up front that, you know, for the first couple of minutes, they're going to maybe feel the edge a little bit, but it's amazing. You know, 5 to 10 minutes later, the patient comes back in after they've been sitting with the lens, and they really feel the lens is comfortable. They don't feel the edge anymore, and they're really getting a little bit of a difference into, you know, their endpoint vision. You know, I think when we talk about a custom lens sometimes, I think I'll throw that at the patient because I want them to know how special this product is and maybe how special they feel their visual needs are. But this lens is pretty straightforward to fit as far as the practitioner is concerned. You know, you just basically, you know, you get the lens on, either from your fitting set. I tend to order the lens. You know, the support that we get from Alden is just awesome, and you know, we bring the lens in. But you know, it's just like fitting another toric or another multifocal. You're going to do the over refraction and loose lenses and look for rotation and come back with it. But I think, you know, it's a straightforward fit, and I think that makes it a little bit easier for all of us. And I think what it eliminates is, you know, the issues of crazy chair time. If the lens is on, it's going to behave the way it is. That lens is rotating 10 degrees one way or the other. I know if I have to reorder it, that's where it's going to be the next time, and that's great. Instead of having this lens that's kind of wandering, the stability of this product is right where it needs to be. what a great opportunity we have to fit so many patients. There's just so many parameters to go through. I just had a patient the other day that had a 475 still. We're putting the lens on. I haven't got it back yet, but at least I'm able to put that lens on the patient. And what I love about the product the most is I'm going to get this lens in 2 or 3 days. The other product that's on the market I may be waiting 2 weeks for, might be on back order, and then I have to order another lens. This is immediate. The patient's going to have it, and we're going to have it back in a week. We're going to know where we're at, and we're going to know where we're going to go. So it makes life, I think, great for everybody is to move forward in a direction where we know where we're going to be putting this lens or not on the patient. And that kind of goes back to where we talked about custom for the patient's specific RX and visual needs. It's just so many ranges of parameters and the ability to have the different powers in the P1, P2, P3. When we first started fitting the lens, we had the P1, P2, and I think we were losing. We couldn't get sometimes the near range we wanted on that 55-plus patient. Sometimes when I go with the P3, then one thing I found sometimes I'll have to do is find the patient might have to move the lens in a little closer to get that great near point vision, but it is really good. So maybe we have to throw another little minus on the distance, but again, we can play with those little things. Maybe go with unequal adds, a P2 in one eye, P3 in the other, and play with the distance. But there's just those opportunities, and I think the opportunities that we get with the customer support, et cetera, when we have issues, have problems from Alden, has been just great. There's just been no questions. They're willing to do whatever it takes to make this patient happy, and I think all those things make it easy for us to reach for this product. And that's kind of where I'm at with this lens. I love the ability to just satisfy all these. The easy patient, let's say, that has a -75 still, to that patient that has a 4 1/4 still. Let's go.
That's great information for all of us, and that's what we like to hear from our clients that are out there, our doctors and our fitters, that they're having success with it and that we're doing a good job on our end, too, in consultation. So, Bill, do you have any questions there that you want to pose to either one of our doctors?
I do. We've had several folks write in. I will tell you the first question that I had when I was going through your presentation, Maggie, what's dual elliptical stabilization?
Well, it's kind of what Charlie describes it as, an enhanced double slab off, so that you have the thin zones out on the edges and it stabilizes that lens. So as soon as you put it in and blink once, boom, it's right where it's supposed to be. We have markings at 3 and 9 o'clock so that you can assess for any kind of rotation on the lens. But I guess Dr. Corey and Dr. Shute may back me up on that. Not very much rotation with this lens. I mean, sometimes we have to change it by 5 or maybe even 10 degrees, but most of the time it ends up where it should be.
Oh, no question.
I would totally validate that and say that I have had very few instances where I've had this lens rotate beyond 10 degrees on the patient's eye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And sometimes, I think maybe only one time that we've gone from the base curve that we've had to just maybe go a little tighter to reduce the rotation. And when we went to that tighter curve, it resolved any of that. But what I like about it, again, is the ability to know that when I order it again, it's going to be sitting exactly where it was the first time I looked at it.
Which leads me to the next question was, if you perchance do have an unstable rotation with the lens, how do you fix it?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call people at Alden. I'm going to talk to Maggie about it, and she's going to have a bunch of suggestions for me, and I'm going to follow exactly what she has to say, and when it comes back, that's exactly how it's going to work. But probably going to go to I think usually the suggestion again is to a little tighter base curve. Change the diameter.
That or sometimes a little larger lens. Yeah. If it's a fairly large cornea, that'll be the first thing I would say, is if someone had an unstable rotation, it was kind of not always in the same spot, I would immediately ask, so what's the HDID? And then if they tell me it's a fairly large cornea, I'd say, okay, so let's go a little larger and see if we can drape that lens a little better and stabilize it.
Good. I have another question that came through. What is your planned replacement schedule of choice with Astera multifocal toric?
I'll let Natalie go first on that one.
Yeah, I have my patients change the lenses quarterly. So 3 months on one lens and then go to another lens.
I'm kind of in between 3 to 6 months, again, depending, maybe some of the disinfection system, what they're, basically, a lot of these patients are maybe coming off a monthly modality and whatnot, but it's, depending on wearing schedule and taking a look at them down the line, seeing how the lens is depositing, et cetera, I'm a little bit more flexible with it, but, I think it's kind of in that zone for me a little bit. I know the suggestion is 3 months, but sometimes we get a little bit more and sometimes we get a little less.
Good. Maggie alluded to, here's another question that came in, because Maggie alluded to, or maybe it was Dr. Shute alluded to, we have the ability to fit a cell in down their quarter. How often do you find that to be the case?
Well, that's a tough one for me. I'm not, I think the nice thing about it is you have the ability to do that, but, you have all sorts of patients that have all sorts of different requirements, and, I haven't had to do that, but I love the fact that I could get that point and put that on the patient if it was necessary to try that. But, there's all different kinds of characters out there, and there's some people that, you put on the lens and they're 20, 25, and they just are happy as anything. And you got that other patient that's seen 20, 15 plus, and it's not good enough. So it's just nice to have the flexibility of having so many parameters to go to.
And the last question that I have from the audience tonight is, what's your preferred care system?
I'm on any, my preferred care system would be either Clear Care or Peroxyclear, basically any hydrogen peroxide solution. And I think it just gives them a better comfort. I think it gives it a better clean, and that's what I put patients on in that lens.
I have to agree with that, and I think the nice thing about those systems is, again, the lens is a little cleaner. Maybe they can get a little bit more wear out of it by being in that system. But that's definitely the system to go to.
Oh, that's great.
So it looks like we have a couple. It looks like we have a couple questions about small pupils in this lens.
Shoot.
Okay, so
Yeah.
One question says, many patients have smaller pupils, haven't done well, so what do we think about these? Like, what are their parameters for the small pupil? I haven't really encountered that issue with small pupils. I've had older patients in this lens, patients in their 60s who were kind of approaching that smallish pupil kind of problem, and just I think because of the lack of rotation, and I think about the ability to correct fill, which we don't have necessarily in a standard soft multifocal. I've not encountered that issue as much as I have with like a standard soft multifocal.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm having a little bit of trouble all of a sudden seeing questions. Are there any more questions out there?
That looked to be the only questions that I saw.
Okay. Bill, you want to explain what this is?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Beginning about 2 months ago, Alden decided to embellish the Astera multifocal tube for both the patient and the practitioner. And what we've started to do, and those of you who've been fitting Astera multifocal toric have probably seen this card, but this card, quite simply, just reviews the benefits of Astera multifocal toric, what makes it special for the patient, and it also goes a long way towards signifying to the patient that their eye care practitioner is on the cutting edge of contact lens technology. It reviews what to expect from Astera, and how their life will become better with the use of Astera multifocal toric. So you will be receiving this card with all your future Astera multifocal toric. So I hope you appreciate it. We feel that it does provide a good service for both the patient and the practitioner.
Bill, I'd have to say what I love about that as well. I think that's a great card for any multifocal patient, you know, because a lot of those points that your bullet you put up in there is exactly what we like to tell all our multifocal patients.
Well, we try. So we're getting towards the end of tonight's webinar, but we did want to make sure that you knew how to get a hold of anybody within Alden. You can see our line, the order department, with our 800 number. You also have the ability, if you choose to email an order into us, you just put the orders at aldenoptical.com. We have our consultation department listed, Maggie Walsh and John Davis. John isn't on this call, but both the fellows in the CLSA, both are experienced contact lens fitters and excellent consultants, so I certainly would encourage you to use the resources that we provide you to the utmost. And finally, my phone number, my email is listed, and if you would have any questions from a sales or marketing perspective, please contact me. Finally, on our website, we do have a Astera multifocal toric weblet, if you will, and that is the email address for that, and please click on that. We do have several other webinars on there. Most importantly, we have a recording of a presentation that was given at the 2013 Global Specialty Lens Symposium meeting, where we introduced Astera multifocal toric, and there's, again, an awful lot of good information at your fingertips if you click on that recording. So with that, I certainly want to thank my colleague Maggie Walsh, and most certainly I want to tip my hat and thank Drs. Corey and Shute for their information and taking the time to attend this webinar and give some very good fitting tips. And I'd also finally like to conclude with thanking our audience. We welcome any feedback on this webinar. We thank you for your business. And with that, I'd like to wish you good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.